we go.
This is how we do it.
This is how we do. Oh,
Right?
copyrighted. Can't do copyrighted.
I know it is copyrighted. Hey, everyone. Welcome to All About the Joy. We're so glad to have you here. Rick, hi, as always.
Hello.
But I want to welcome Douglas. How are you? I'm so glad you're here and on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, and I'm doing great.
Welcome. So I want to welcome our guest, and I want to tell everyone who he is before we start interviewing him. But Douglas Glenn Clark, who I kept calling Glenn, I think forever. We met back in, I don't know if we met, but we talked in 2016, right?
Mm-hmm.
And forgive me because I know it has something to do with the AMR Foundation where I worked with Arlene Rosen. But what do you remember? Because I was really trying to figure out how we connected.
You know, I'm in the same boat with you. I remember talking and being connected and thinking, how did that happen?
I think it was through the foundation. So here's what I remember. For me, it's really important to kind of always have context why I bring people on the show. You were helping us, or you were going to help us with our website and our press release. That's the only thing that I remember. And that's how we started talking. And at some point, we went back and forth on LinkedIn. That's what I remember.
Yeah, and I was writing for businesses primarily back then.
Right. So here's my thing. We're going to talk about you being a ghostwriter, but I want to talk about how you started writing to begin with. Like, did you know as a kid? Did it happen to you some other time? Tell me, when did you become inspired to become a writer?
Well, you know, oddly enough, when I was very young, I had three things I wanted to do. And they were all in the arts: performing, making some music. My father was a musician.
Okay.
And I wanted to write a book. Now, no one in my family was an author.
Okay.
I have no idea why, so young, maybe 12.
Yep.
I had this distinct choice, or made these distinct choices, and I proceeded.
Okay, but you didn't just proceed. You're not, like everyone always says, I'm a writer, but you're a writer of everything. You've done screenplays, you've done a play on Broadway, you've done books, I'm trying to remember everything that was on your website, but you've written in every genre. You also write music, which I thought was mind-blowingly crazy. But I think that's pretty unique to have kind of such an overall love of the art that you can fit in every genre.
Well, thank you. I'm having to look back now. You're right. I did do all those things. And, it's been so odd to start in one place. And then, 10 years later, you've touched all these different bases. I think one of the best things that happened to me, though, I began writing as a playwright, and I had some plays done, got some grants and those sorts of steps forward. But when I became a journalist, which I did kind of
right
through the back door, really, I didn't go to Columbia Journalism School. Right. But when that started, I really felt that taught me how to write professionally, in the sense that there were going to be some tough deadlines. I was going to have to draw from interviews and research and various points of reference to be able to create something. And I use all of that today because eventually newspapers died.
Yeah. Or they're still dying. There's some holding on. There are some holding on.
Yeah. And they certainly have made a rebound, because I was working for the Los Angeles Daily News. Mm-hmm. And at the turn of the century, when the internet rose in all its glory and everything had to be free.
Right.
But since then, jobs were lost then, and I had no future in journalism then as a daily newspaper guy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that forced me into freelancing and led to books and led to you and I meeting, because I was writing for businesses. Yeah. So tell me about your business, and we'll see what we can do.
But here's the thing. I had to do some research on the whole ghostwriting thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I know Rick has questions too, but I think it's, I think it's, I don't want to say weird, but that's the word coming out of my mouth. For you to go from being this journalist and being, were you also a reporter? Because you said you were interviewing too. So you were a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up becoming a ghostwriter? Which first, can we tell people what that means? Because I
Yeah.
didn't realize how extensive of a definition that was.
Yeah, it's why it is still a mystery. I don't know, but
Okay.
it does. Oh, it creates some anxiety sometimes in the people I write for,
Mhm.
and other people are fine with it, and they just need some help.
Right.
And basically, a ghostwriter helps the author. We'll call the author to be a business person, theater person, whomever decides they want to tell their story. Yeah, so they need help. They don't
Mhm.
have the time or the skills. And I got into ghostwriting because at one point I realized, if I'm going to freelance, how do I describe what I do?
Mhm.
I can't have 20 things that I say I do.
Right.
And I finally settled on, you know, I have written so many people's story as a news writer. I can write your book.
So yeah, I was shocked to find out. I was heartbroken today, and like I want you to walk me through this. I was looking up books that were written by other people, ghost written, right?
Mhm.
So some of the famous ones we already know, which no one is surprised by this one, I tell you, but The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump was actually by Tony Schwartz.
Yeah.
And Tony Schwartz has then said he's regretted writing that or whatever. So I want to get into that in a minute, not so much about the Trump part or the Tony Schwartz part, but
Yeah.
about kind of how do you go through that process with the author. I am Malala. So Malala, who we all love, right? She's an amazing young woman. Her book was also ghostwritten by Christina Lamb, who's a foreign correspondent, right?
Mhm.
But here's the one that I was heartbroken about because it's one of my favorite books. And actually, I love the idea of it was Profiles in Courage by John
Yeah.
F. Kennedy. How did I not know that that was a book that was
Well,
ghostwritten? Ted Sorensen, that's right. Ted Sorensen wrote, uh, Profiles in Courage. So, how do you deal with that? Does anyone know that you are the ghost, that you are the actual writer? Does the author take over the work? How does it work?
yeah.
I would say too, could we, for like the 7-year-old watching, and you just say ghostwriter, like, oh, is it ghost stories? No, sweetheart. Like, explain
Yeah.
what it means. Because I think a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
people still don't know what that means.
Well, the ghost means I need to be invisible.
Mm.
Let's start with JFK.
Mm-hmm.
That book won the Pulitzer Prize, and everyone thought, oh,
Yeah, it
isn't
was
it wonderful. We have such a literate political leader, and he
right.
wins the Pulitzer as well as becoming well known and eventually to the White House. Well,
How do you deal with that?
how does JFK then say, oh, by the way,
I didn't write it.
Sorensen or Pierre Salinger, whoever they thought at the time, how does he give up the identity of being a writer and a Pulitzer Prize winning writer?
That's
So
so sad. Yeah.
that's tricky.
Just kind of explain it in a different way because I think that's what Rick is getting at. A ghostwriter, in layman's term, my way of looking at it is, if you're a business or you're somebody who has an idea of a book, but you're not a writer or you don't have the time and you don't really want to sit down and write all these chapters out, whatever, you hire somebody else to write the book. I'm going to say with you, but it is
Mhm.
kind of for you, isn't it? I mean, that's where it gets confusing. That's the
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy thing.
Well, there are so many different situations. For example, I have a new client, and he very successful businessman, but he was a very successful young college athlete,
Okay.
and that's part of what makes the story unique and fun. But we were on the phone the other day, and we've just started. He said,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, Doug, your name is going to be on the front cover with my name. And I rarely see that.
Right.
I don't fight for it. It just becomes
So
difficult.
you'd be co-author? Is that what it is? Or
Yeah, it would probably be title by my client's name and maybe with Douglas Glenn Clark.
right, right,
But you see any number of nonfiction books with two names on the
right,
cover. They're not
right,
necessarily a ghostwriter. They might have just collaborated on the book. So
right.
you caught me off guard with that, and his point was it's an integrity thing. I don't want to
Yeah.
pretend I wrote
Oh.
something I didn't write. That I'm going to help. I'm going to be. You need me to write the book, but I'm not actually technically the writer. So there's a scenario.
Okay, but that's an interesting. I mean, is that about integrity? I mean, okay, let's just bring it back to John F. Kennedy. He has a great idea about profiles and cards. If people don't know the book, basically it's about honoring each person in politics who, I mean, I'm really dumbing it down here, but it's essays, right, of each individual person who he believes are doing something that's a profile and courage. They're doing something so extraordinary and they might lose their election or they're taking a big risk because they're doing what's in the best interest of the country first. So it's a great idea. It's an amazing idea.
Yeah,
But he didn't sit down and start writing page for page. He hired someone like you and said, here's my idea. And then what's the process after that?
yeah, but he was. It's usually not so easy or simple as saying, "Hey, here's the idea. Go disappear and go write that." JFK probably had his own stories, the reason he loved the people he focused on. So
Yeah.
there would be a dialogue.
Right.
Let's pretend we know
Right.
what really
Right.
happened there. But, a JFK or the author would be in conversation regularly with the
And
ghost.
say, right, so I have this other idea for a chapter. This is the story I want to tell you. You know, me and my mom were walking down the street and we came across this car, whatever. And then you would take that information and you would put it in a story form that was written down in a way because look at here's the thing, it is rare in my opinion, most people do not write the way they speak and tell stories. The reason why I know this is because I am pathetically exactly that person. I write exactly the way I speak, which gets me in trouble a lot when it comes to grammar and spelling and using words like stuffage that don't really exist, like making up stuff. So, one of the things that's really interesting is that when you have an editor that works with you, right, and that's different, an editor is different. If they don't know you well enough, they're going to change the way in which you write. It's really a hard, difficult one. So, my question for you, Douglas, is this: how do you get that person's tone? That person's like that's what the mastery is of what you do, because if not it would just be you writing for somebody else and it's your voice, right?
Hmm. Well, interesting. When Sarah Palin, remember her,
Yes, yes.
uh, became famous, she got a publishing contract.
Hmm.
And that first book was obviously a ghostwriter
Yeah.
behind it.
Hmm.
And in fairness, Sarah Palin never claimed to be an author
Right.
and was in the midst of a campaign or the
Right,
campaign.
the whole thing that happened with John McCain, right? Was it John
Yeah,
McCain? Yeah, John
yeah.
McCain. Right.
And one of the book was reviewed, and one reviewer said, "This doesn't sound anything like Sarah Palin."
Exactly. Right.
And that was a complaint
Yeah.
because Palin actually has a voice.
Right.
Mhm.
Whether you like it or not, she has a distinct sound
Exactly.
and rhythm.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book for a dentist. Actually, his son was funding it and forcing his dad to.
To write a story. That's good.
Yeah, and his father was actually not famed, but had become well known for training young athletes.
Okay.
And so, in any case, I wrote the book. And the son said to me, "Hey, my mom and I agree that you really captured his voice."
Wow.
maybe a little too well.
Oh. I would think that's the mastery of what you do. You have to be able to catch that person's voice.
It's a compliment.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rick, it's the ultimate compliment.
Yeah.
And that's what you hope for. But I also say to the author, look, the way you sound on the telephone or in a Zoom meeting, by all means, I'm listening.
Mhm.
But we have to write 50,000 words. And there are going to be some times when we just have to be grammatically correct and finish a chapter or a sentence. And it may not be exactly the way you talk at dinner.
Oh, I'm laughing because my first manuscript was like 600 pages or something. It was just me typing everything. You know what I mean? And my friends took it in sections first to go through it, and most of it was cut out. I don't want to miss Melanie's question. She asked this: what's the difference between a ghostwriter and using a pen name? Great
Well,
question, Melanie. Great question.
yeah, excellent. A pen name. You remember that somewhat famous author J.K. Rowling?
Yes, Harry Potter.
There you go. Well, she used a pen name when she decided she wanted to write crime novels, and I think Robert Galbraith is that name. Well, initially, when that first Robert book was published, they kept it secret, and her point was she wanted to break from Harry Potter. And she's not the first author to start a new series and style using a pen name. So she still is the woman we know her to be, but for those other
those other novels she did. Yeah. I didn't read them, but yeah. Oh, really? I've never read them. I've read all the Harry Potters, of course, when they came out. So a pen name, Melanie, also is used by a lot of actors as well. We were talking about, I guess I don't know if you'd use the same verbiage, right? Pen name, but people change their names all the time. They don't use their real names in order to break away. Like we were talking about Martin Sheen in one of our last episodes, or as Rick likes to call him, Martin. What is it you call him? Martin Sheen. Sheen. Right. But his name it's very Latin and I forget what it is. But
Estevez?
That's his last name.
Emilio Estevez.
No, Emilio's his son, but his name is.
Oh, yeah. I forget.
You know what, Rick? Your mic is really hot. I don't know if you knew that, but you would know that if I had let you talk like even a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you would have seen it already. So I don't know.
I was going to say too, Stephen King's son did the same thing because he didn't want if he got popular, he didn't want it to be, well, that's because everybody loves my dad. So he used a different name, and that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And so, Melanie, that's what a pen name is, and actors, other people may choose a different name, but a ghostwriter is not the name on the book. Let's pretend J.K. Rowling decided, I've got this Harry Potter thing in my head, but I don't know how to write it. So she hires me. I write it, and that's a ghostwriter. I'm behind the scenes. I'm invisible.
Nobody knows it's you. They all think it's J.K. Rowling who wrote the book.
Right.
Let's be clear. J.K. Rowling did write the Harry Potter. So.
Yes, let's make that.
let's not take that away from her. God knows she's going through enough already, right? She's already have enough hoopla. But just to talk about that too, her name is actually not J.K. Rowling's or Rowling's. She had to do that because nobody would take her book because no one thought it was a viable book. So she went with J.K. so people would assume she was a man, which is a whole other conversation. Yeah, her parents didn't name her J.K. You know what I mean? But she did that on purpose because she got so many rejections, and then she was like, "I'm going to use a different name." So. She used her initials. That's how that happened too. What kind of people hire you or do you work with? And are there people that you choose not to work with?
Well, there are a couple I wish I had chosen not to work with. But
you tell. We'd love the tea on that.
Well, let's do the first part of the question. Nonfiction became so big in these last 20 years. It was always a large presence presence in the publishing world. But I think the advent of Kindle, I know, when self-publishing became available in a brand new way, men and women in business, for example, medicine, what have you, realized they should have a legitimate book without feeling it was a vanity press. Meaning that they wrote a book, paid somebody a lot of money, and they published it.
Oh, okay.
They could actually legitimately do something creative, unique to their background, their expertise. And I started ghostwriting at about that time, 2008. And for the reasons I've mentioned, so often I'll be writing for someone with a business background, but I always say to the author, look, here's my job. I'm going to help you write the story that only you can write.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. That sounds weird, right?
Well, meaning it has to be personal. In other words, let me back up a little bit. You said, who do you work with and who would you rather not work with?
Okay.
Well,
fair.
I would rather work with someone who understands, I know you have been through tough times as well as all the business success you've had. If you're willing to be vulnerable and tell me the low points as well as the successes, that story is your story and only you can tell that story because you have lived it.
Right.
So we may be writing a business book, but my technique is to get the author to tell us their story.
Their whole story.
And then we blend that in with whatever they want to share.
But you only work with, you know what? I have to be quiet now. I promised. Well, hey, Rick.
Well, questions I had was, do you generally have like a contract and say like, if this makes it big, I wrote the thing, so I better get some money out of this thing too.
Oh.
That's an interesting point. Now, when we're talking about someone like Tony, who wrote Donald Trump's book.
Right.
Now, that level in the publishing industry, he would have been paid a lot of money, and he would have had, I'm pretty sure, listening to what he said about the book, that he had a nice deal of sharing in the royalty of that book, and it became a bestseller.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Wouldn't we all love to have that?
No, he regrets it. I don't think you could pay someone enough money to do that.
To do that now, yeah. But back in the day, he was happy to have the gig.
Yeah.
And it turned out he's a terrific writer. And
you said his name like you know him. I'm just spilling tea here. You said like, Tony. I'm just throwing that out there. So
yeah, well, no, I don't know Tony.
Okay, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so Don, so his publishing company paid him probably an upfront money and then turned around and he got royalties afterwards?
Well, to Rick's question, that would have been worked out in the contract. They didn't just say later, hey, you did a great job, we're going to give you all this money. That has to be set in place. But, some of my contracts, of course, are not with traditional publishers. I have a contract with the author and sometimes with an author and what I'll call partnership publishing.
Right.
And so it's really, to be frank, in my situation, it's better to have a fee for the book, not worry about what happens down the road, but create a good book. And once you're done, and that's the money you made from the work you've done.
Right. So you get paid a fee up front. So let's say you and I were going to work on a book together and I wasn't going to write it. You were going to be my ghostwriter. I would pay X amount of dollars. I know all your fee structure is up on your website. So people can go check that out at yourghostwriter.com. And there are slashes in between each word, as it is on the ticker at the bottom. But then that's it, right? I mean, then if my book becomes a bestseller, you don't get anything? That seems not fair, but...
Well, yes and no. It's kind of. Let me put it this way. Let's say we have a stack of money on the table, and I can either take all of that money and write the book, or I can take. I'm just naming a number. 75% of that money to write the book, with the hope that later down the road, I'll make even more money on a royalty.
Right.
Well, that's speculation.
Right.
So that's the issue, really.
That's a
Are
risk.
you willing to speculate?
Right.
And it just depends.
Like, well, if somebody's a celebrity or somebody's book, I mean, if Barack Obama, he wrote his own book, but if Barack Obama was like, hey, I'd love you to be the ghostwriter on this book, you'd be a fool you'd take 75% and know you're going to get royalties on the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Sure. You would work something out. But, the president has joked that Michelle hired a ghostwriter. And
that I knew.
And no embarrassment, she.
Yeah, it bums me out though. I don't know why.
Well, that's an issue that a lot of people have. It feels dishonest sometimes. I think, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I had a client who had a great concept. I really liked the concept. And so I was hired to write this book, nonfiction. And she was so paranoid about anyone knowing that I wrote her book that when it was published, although we had a contract that said in the acknowledgments, my name would be there, and in some simple way of saying, thank you, Douglas, for the publishing and writing consultations.
Right.
Well, when the book was published, it wasn't there.
Oh, no.
Oh.
And it was too late for me to do anything. And it's not as if it became a bestseller, but I was proud of that book. Right. And, a ghostwriter has to find a way of making an agreement with a client. Look, I have to be able to tell someone that you hired me. Otherwise, who's going to hire me to do their book?
I know, but you know what? But that is a legal document too. I mean, not that I think you're, wanting to sue people or whatever, but actually what she did showed more about who she was. Yeah. That was actually more unethical than what she thought having a ghostwriter would be about. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Yeah, well, meet all kinds out there.
Exactly. Oh my God. See, Rick, I'm giving you space. Jump in.
Oh, okay. So other question was, so everybody's different. Everybody's case is different, obviously. But what would you say maybe on average percentage of people that actually give you a really good skeleton, at least, of what they want versus just a very brief idea and here, just write it. If you know what I mean? Like as far as guidance.
You mean, what did we start with?
Yeah, like if I came to you and if I said, can you write a book about birds? And I give you almost nothing else but that, as opposed to I've got an outline and and here's all my points, and then here, make a book out of that. Like how often is it one way versus the other way?
Well, it's really hard to begin if the author hasn't put something together. And that might mean a very loose biography. Or one client, actually it worked out, it just happened to time out this way. It was a book I really wanted to do. I really love the book. It's called Maintenance Man to Millionaire. And it's done pretty well. And Glenn Gonzalez tells his story of wanting to be in real estate. Glenn is fine with me saying that we work together. But the way it began was an interview much like this that he did for a podcaster in real estate. And for an hour, Glenn sat on camera and went through his whole life story. So that was ideal. I didn't have to ask him to take the time to do that. And because he was speaking to the audience that the book would speak to, he hit the major points. And it was, even then, it was just a beginning. And
how long is the process? Like, someone comes to you and says, I have an idea for a book. And then it's a collaborative effort. I assume you speak on a pretty regular basis, right? Until you're done with the book, right? Yeah. It's not like, here's my template, here's my idea about birds. Let me know when you're done. You know what I mean? So from beginning to end, what would be a time frame? Is it a year it takes to write a book, or is it 3 months, or?
Well, getting back to Rick's question, it does depend. How much do you have? I think of those books in the 6-month time frame.
Okay.
That's 50,000 words.
Yeah.
But even some shorter books might still take 6 months because I have to drag it out. I have to be an attorney in a courtroom.
Right.
Drag facts and so forth out of them.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah, you need to pull stuff out from people so that you have something to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But 6 months is not a long time to write a book. In case people don't realize, it takes a long time to write a book. Even a bad book, it takes a long time to write a book. So 6 months is nothing.
It's more me saying, I can only book so many projects per year. Right. How efficient can I be?
Let's talk about this website, authorlaunch.gumroad.com. Yeah. It's down on the ticker here. I replaced your other one, which is your ghostwriter.com, which people should go and check out. There are links there. And Rick just put it up in the chat as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about this website?
Yeah, this is very simple courses and some guidance. I even put in the headline on the authorlaunch.gumroad.com site, hey, writer, how about another course? No, you don't need another writing course. You just need some help. So there are a few courses that you can download for free there, and they're very simple, but they're put together to help people who are trying to get going. And they can't get started as a writer. They want to be a writer.
Oh.
Or they're stuck and they need a few ideas to get out of that rut. And so go there, visit. It won't hurt you. There are 3 courses which you'll see have a 0 right next to them that you can download. Mm-hmm. And then what I'm also saying is, hey, contact me. I'd love to have 15-minute conversations with people who are trying to figure out where they belong in their writing, and sometimes to do it themselves. It's not a business call. It's try to help them get started.
Is the call a free consultation? Are you doing a free consultation too, 15-minute?
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing? I just want to make sure I read the email right. And Rick has a saying that I love that he says all the time. What is it, Rick?
If it's free, it's for me.
If it's free, it's for me. Right? Yeah. So it's courses, but also anybody who's interested in writing a book and doesn't know where to start, doesn't know what to do, go and visit Douglas's website, yourghostwriter.com, or the one that's in the ticker right now at the bottom, authorlaunch.gumroad.com, and reach out to him, and he at least will give you some nice time and energy and tell you what your next steps might be. Is that fair enough?
That's fair enough. Yes.
I think that's fair enough. Yeah, that'd be great. I might take you up on that. I don't know.
Why not?
I don't know.
Why not? Sure. What a pleasure to be here, and really enjoyed speaking with you both. I hope we offer something useful to your audience.
No, absolutely. So everyone, thank you for stopping by again, and we'll be back next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Thanks for stopping by. All About the Joy. Be better and stay beautiful, folks. Have a sweet day.